My grandfather is in surgery tonight. I have to get to Atlanta. Please.
Sir, the flight is full.
I'm begging you. She's only 8.
Some people will say anything for a free seat.
He looks homeless. Wandered in from the street.
Please. Just one seat, please.
Sienna Morgan stood behind the couple as they boarded. Worn t-shirt, old backpack, $14 in her pocket.
Transfer my seat to him.
Are you insane? $1,000 for a stranger?
Go. Be with her.
Tears streamed down his face. What's your name? Sienna Morgan. She doesn't know yet. This old man is about to change her life forever. 2 weeks before that night at gate B12, Sienna Morgan didn't even know where Atlanta was on the map of her life. She was 28, Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant, a studio apartment so small you could touch both walls with your arms. For 5 years, she had been an operations analyst at Carlton Logistics. She built their East Coast distribution network from a metal desk in a basement office. She ate cold pasta from Tupperware while men in glass offices upstairs took the credit for her work. Then, on a Tuesday morning at 9:12 a.m., the email came. Effective immediately, your position has been eliminated. Severance, 6 weeks. She read it 3 times. She didn't cry. She walked to the bathroom, washed her face with cold water, came back, and finished the report she had been working on. Because that's who Sienna Morgan is. On her way out, she stopped by Maria's cubicle. Maria had been laid off too. Single mom, 3 kids. Sienna helped her pack her box without saying a word. They hugged at the elevator. Maria cried. Sienna didn't. That night, alone in her apartment, she did what she always did when the world got loud. She touched the chain inside her shirt. On it was a single quarter, her mother's quarter, given to her at high school graduation. For luck, Mom had said, but you won't need it. You make your own. Sienna never flipped that quarter. She just held it sometimes, when she needed to remember who had raised her. Her mother had died 3 years earlier. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. 3 months from diagnosis to the hospital chapel. Mom had raised Sienna and her younger brother Devin alone. Daytime cleaning offices in Midtown, nights at a CVS pharmacy. She never complained, not once. What she did was talk. About small things. About kindness. Above the kitchen sink in her studio, in Mom's own handwriting, was a quote. Kindness costs nothing, but it remembers everything. It was the first thing Sienna saw every morning, and it was the reason Sienna could not afford to fail. Because Devin was 19, a sophomore at Morehouse College in Atlanta, the only person in their family who had ever made it to college. He wanted to be a civil rights attorney. Sienna was his co-signer. $32,000 in student loans, tuition due in November. She had not told him about the layoff. Every night for 2 weeks, she checked her bank balance. $1,240. Rent was 9 days overdue. The landlord had left 2 notes under her door, and still she said nothing. Devin called every Sunday with the same opening line, "How's my big sister?" Sienna would smile through the phone and lie. "Good. Busy. Tell me about your week." Then on a Tuesday morning, an email arrived that changed everything. Subject, Director of Logistics Operations, Final Interview Invitation. From Patricia Carlisle, Office of the Chairman, Brown & Wilson Holdings, Atlanta. She had applied months ago and forgotten about it. Brown & Wilson was a strange company, a private holding with no website, no CEO photo, just 6 lines of text on LinkedIn. Founded 1986, private holdings, logistics, real estate, capital. She had assumed they didn't exist, but here they were, inviting her to Atlanta. Friday morning, 8:30 a.m., top floor, the chairman's office. She read it 5 times. Then she sat down on the kitchen floor and quietly cried. Not from sadness, from hope. The problem was money. The cheapest last-minute Delta fare to Atlanta was $1,089. Her savings were $1,240. After the ticket, she would have $151 left, and her rent was $1,400 overdue. But it was the only flight that would get her there in time, so she drained the account. Then she walked 5 blocks to Gem Pawn on Atlantic Avenue. She laid her mother's gold watch on the counter. Mom had bought it herself for her 40th birthday, the only thing she had ever spent real money on. "What's it worth?" Sienna asked. $250. "It's worth $2,000. To you, maybe." She left with $250 in 20s, and the watch she would never see again. Thursday afternoon, she ironed her only white blouse, using a borrowed iron from Mrs. Avila down the hall. She printed her resume at the Bedford-Stuyvesant Public Library on a free guest computer, 25 cents per page. She flattened the printed boarding pass 3 times with her palm until the creases disappeared. Before she left, she stood for a moment in front of the kitchen wall. She looked at her mother's quote. She touched the quarter through her shirt. Then she picked up her old backpack. Her hand tightened around the strap, a habit she had whenever her body knew something her mind didn't. By 8:10 p.m., she was at LaGuardia. A northeast blizzard was forming somewhere over Pennsylvania. She counted the money in her wallet. $14.36. Just enough for an Uber from Atlanta to downtown if she didn't eat. She sat down at gate B12 and waited for the last flight of the night. She did not know that across the country in Boston, a 64-year-old man had just been told his private jet would not be flying. She did not know that man would arrive at gate B12 in 32 minutes. Coat too thin, hands shaking, voice breaking, begging for a seat. She did not know that the seat in her hand was about to become the most important seat in his life. And in hers. By 9:30 p.m., the gate agent's voice cracked through the speaker. "Final boarding call, Delta 2208 to Atlanta. This flight is at full capacity." But Sienna Morgan still hadn't moved from her seat at gate B12. Hannah Bennett, the gate agent, had been calling standby names for the last 15 minutes. 11 of them. Not one had cleared. The blizzard had grounded 3 other Atlanta flights at LaGuardia, and every stranded passenger had crowded into B12, hoping for a miracle that wasn't coming. That was when he appeared. White hair, a worn tweed coat that didn't look warm enough for January, old Oxford shoes scratched at the toes, a scuffed brown suitcase he was dragging behind him, slow, like the weight had become too much in the last hour. He was breathing hard. He looked older than 60. He looked like a man who had run. He stopped at Hannah's counter and set his hands on the edge. "Excuse me, I need to be on this flight." Hannah looked up from her screen. "I'm so sorry, sir. The flight is completely full. Next flight to Atlanta is 6:15 a.m. tomorrow." The old man did not raise his voice. He did not bang the counter. He just stood there, hands trembling, and said it the way a man says it when nothing else is left. "My granddaughter is in surgery tonight at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, emergency neurosurgery. She's 8 years old." Hannah's expression changed. He pulled an old flip phone from his coat pocket, the screen scratched and dim, and turned it toward her. On it was a photo of a little blonde girl in a hospital gown, smiling at the camera. Below the photo, a text message was open on the screen. "Dad, doctors say tonight is critical. Please come." Hannah stared at the photo for a long moment. Then she looked at the line behind him, the standby crowd, the families with toddlers, the business people in winter coats, all waiting for the same single seat that did not exist. "Sir," she said quietly, "I want to help, but I don't have anything to give you." And that was when the cruelty started. A man in a Rolex stepped out from the boarding line. Wool overcoat, polished black shoes, the kind of face that has practiced contempt in mirrors. He spoke loud so the whole gate could hear. "Step aside. Unbelievable. Some people will say anything for a free seat." A blonde woman beside him laughed, not loudly, just enough. She was holding a glass of white wine from the airline lounge. She leaned toward her companion and said it the way you would discuss someone's bad shoes. "He looks homeless. He probably wandered in from the street." A few passengers turned away. Some looked at their phones. One older man tightened his grip on his rolling bag and stared straight ahead, like he was deciding whether seeing this was his problem. The old man did not argue. He did not raise his head. He just gripped the edge of the counter harder until his knuckles went white, and he said it again, softer this time, almost to himself. "Please, just one seat. Please?" Sienna Morgan had not moved, but inside her shirt, her hand had risen to the chain. She held the quarter through the cotton. The metal was warm from her skin. She did not flip it. She did not pray. She just remembered. She remembered being 6 years old in a hospital waiting room in East New York. Devin had been hospitalized for severe bronchitis. They didn't have insurance. Their mother had knelt, not begged, knelt in front of the admitting nurse. Her hands were clasped together. "Please don't send him home, please. Just keep him through the night." The nurse had let him stay. Sienna remembered that night every time someone smaller than her needed something bigger than she had. She thought of her interview, the $1,089 ticket, the $14.36 in her wallet, the blouse she had ironed twice, the boarding pass she had pressed flat with her palm 3 times this morning. She thought of Devin. She thought of Mom. She thought of the words on the kitchen wall. Then she stood up. Her heart was pounding. She was not brave. She was just done watching. She picked up her old backpack. Her hand tightened around the strap. She walked toward the gate counter. The man in the Rolex saw her coming. He glanced at her once, worn t-shirt, old backpack, no jewelry, no makeup, and a small, knowing smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. He thought he already knew what was about to happen. He didn't. Some decisions in life take 3 seconds to make and 10 years to understand. Sienna Morgan walked the last 6 steps to Hannah Bennett's counter without looking at anyone. She set her boarding pass on the metal surface and pushed it forward with 2 fingers. "Transfer my seat to him." Hannah blinked. "Ma'am?" "Seat 22B, the flight to Atlanta. Transfer it to him." Hannah looked at the pass, then at Sienna, then at the old man still standing 2 feet away. "Ma'am, this is a non-refundable economy ticket. If you transfer it, you don't get any of that money back. I can't refund this." "I know." "You're sure?" "Just transfer it, please." Hannah held her gaze for 1 more second. Then she nodded slowly. She took the pass, ran her badge across the scanner, and typed for a moment. A fresh boarding pass slid out of the printer. New name, same seat, same flight. Sienna picked it up and walked over to the old man. He had not lifted his head. He was still staring at the floor, hands shaking on the strap of his suitcase. She placed the boarding pass into his palm and closed his fingers around it. "Go," she said. "Be with her." He looked at the pass. He looked at her. Something inside him broke open. The tears didn't fall. They just gathered, slow, in the corners of his eyes. "Young lady, I can't accept this. You don't even know me." She smiled at him. Not a big smile, a quiet one. "I know enough. What's your name?" "Sienna. Sienna Morgan." He repeated it like a prayer. Sienna. Sienna Morgan. Then he reached into his coat, slow, careful, and pulled out a single white business card. The paper was thick, the kind only certain kinds of people use. He pressed it into her hand without looking at it. "If you ever need anything in this life," he said, "anything at all, you call this number." She nodded but did not look at the card. She slipped it into the inside pocket of her backpack. She would not call it. She had not done this for that. He stared at her face one more second, as if he were trying to memorize it. Then he turned and walked toward the jet bridge. At the entrance, 2 men in dark suits stood quietly to one side, just out of the light. As the old man passed, both of them nodded to him. Not friendly nods, not casual ones, but the kind of nods men make when they have spent years making sure another man is safe. Sienna did not notice. Hannah did. The old man paused at the mouth of the bridge and turned around one more time. He looked at Sienna across the gate. His lips moved, almost soundlessly. "Thank you, Miss Morgan." Then he disappeared down the jet bridge. The gate door closed behind him. Somewhere on the other side, an engine began to turn. That was when the cruelty came back. The businessman in the Rolex turned slowly toward her. His face was no longer smiling. It was something worse. Amused. "Are you insane? You just threw away $1,000 for a stranger." The blonde woman stepped closer, sipping her wine, looking Sienna up and down. Worn t-shirt, old backpack, flat shoes. "Honey," she said, her voice sugary, "a girl like you doesn't just have $1,000 lying around. Where did you really get that ticket? Because something doesn't add up." The businessman nodded slowly. "You know what? She's right. Who walks around dressed like that with a last-minute Delta ticket to Atlanta? That ticket was non-refundable, too. I saw the agent's screen." The blonde woman tilted her head. "Did you steal someone's credit card, sweetie? Is that what this is? Because if it is, giving it away to an old man doesn't erase what you did. The bank still gets notified." Sienna did not answer. The businessman folded his arms, leaning against the counter like he was giving a lecture in a boardroom. "Look, I'm not trying to be rude, but statistically, people from certain neighborhoods don't book last-minute first-tier carrier tickets unless something funny is going on. I work in finance. I see the data," the blonde woman whispered, just loud enough to carry. "Probably one of those welfare scams. They get the credit card, max it out, and then play the kind stranger card so nobody asks questions. I've read about this." An older man in line lowered his eyes and pretended to read his phone. A woman near the window pulled her toddler closer to her chest. Nobody spoke up. The businessman, encouraged now, gestured toward the closed jet bridge. "And that old man? He's probably in on it. You two probably work together. Homeless guy plays the sympathy card, you play the sacrificing angel, and you both split whatever you stole. I've seen this con before at Penn Station." The blonde woman gave a small, satisfied smile. "It's actually really insulting to people who legitimately save up for things. People like us work for what we have. And then girls like her come along and ruin it for everyone." The businessman turned to Hannah at the counter. "You should call security. Run the credit card. I'm telling you, this is fraud in real time." Hannah did not look up from her screen. Her voice came back flat and steady. "Sir, the transaction cleared 9 days ago. The ticket is hers. Was hers." The blonde woman scoffed. "Of course you're defending her. Why am I not surprised?" Hannah did not respond. She just kept typing. Through all of it, Sienna had said nothing. She had not cried. She had not argued. She had not even shifted her weight. When the blonde woman finished, Sienna turned her head and looked at her. Not glaring, not pleading, just looking. The blonde woman's face twitched, and she looked away first. Then Sienna bent down, picked up her backpack from the floor, and tightened her hand around the strap. She walked, slowly, back to the empty row of chairs she had been sitting in 20 minutes earlier. She sat down. She placed her hand over her shirt, over the chain inside, over the warm coin. She did not flip it. She did not pray. She did not move. Then she pulled out her old flip phone and typed a message to her brother. "Hey Dev, taking a later flight. Don't worry. Love you." She put the phone down. Outside the window in the falling snow, the Delta jet carrying the old man was pushing back from the gate. Outside the gate, the jet's engines deepened. The plane began to taxi. Sienna Morgan did not watch it leave. She just sat there, alone, with $14.36 in her wallet and no flight to her future. And somewhere on that plane, an old man she had never met was crying into his coat sleeve. He was saying the same name over and over. Sienna. Sienna Morgan. Sienna Morgan didn't know that 3 security cameras at gate B12 had recorded every second of what just happened. She didn't know that one of them, months from now, would change everything. She just knew she was alone with $14.36 and a job interview in Atlanta at 8:30 a.m. She walked to the Delta service desk. The agent pulled up the next available flight. Atlanta, red-eye, 5:30 a.m. Last seat is $389. Sienna counted her bills again, even though she already knew. She was $374.64 short. She sat down in a row of empty chairs and pulled out her flip phone. She stared at it for a full minute before she pressed Devin's name. He picked up on the second ring. "Sis? It's almost 10. You okay?" She kept her voice steady. "Hey, Dev. I need to ask you something. Don't ask why, I'll explain later. I need you to send me everything you have, whatever you can. I'll pay you back next week." Long silence. Then, "Send it where?" She told him. 3 minutes later, $250 hit her account. Devin had been saving for new textbooks. He had not asked one more question. She was still $139 short. She walked the length of the terminal. There she found a small pawn shop near the food court, the kind that stays open all night for stranded travelers. She took off the earrings she had been wearing for the last 11 years. Small silver hoops her mother had bought her for her 16th birthday. She set them on the counter. The man behind the glass picked them up, weighed them in his palm. 90. Okay. He paused. You got ID for these? Real ones? The chain looks expensive. Sienna pulled out her driver's license. She also pulled a folded piece of yellowed paper, the certificate of authenticity her mother had kept since the day she bought them. 22 years old. The store name still legible at the top. He looked at the paper. He looked at her. He counted out $90 in tens and twenties without another word. She was still $49 short. She sat down at a closed coffee shop, chairs upside down on the tables, and opened the inside pocket of her backpack. The white business card was still there. She took it out. For the first time since the old man had pressed it into her hand, she looked at it. Bright white, thick paper. On the front, a small logo, B and W, arranged inside a diamond, and 3 words in clean, classic font. Howard B. Call any time. She turned the card over. On the back, in slow, careful handwriting, for Sienna Morgan, thank you for tonight. No title, no company, no address. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she slid it back into the pocket and zipped it closed. She would not call that number. Not for $49. Not for $49 million. She had not done what she did so that an old man would owe her something. She scrolled through her contacts instead. One name she had not called in 3 years. Tasha Reynolds. Baruch College, class of 2018. They had studied together for 2 semesters. Tasha was now a flight attendant for Delta. Sienna typed, Tosh, long story. I need the 5:30 red-eye to ATL tonight. Anything you can do? 3 minutes later. Standby jump seat. Employee discount. $189. I'll text you the code. Sienna closed her eyes for one full second. She had exactly $189.36 left. By 4:30 a.m., Sienna was asleep, slumped sideways in a row of plastic chairs at gate B14. Her hand had not let go of her backpack strap. Even in sleep, she held it tight. A voice over the speaker pulled her up out of it. "Delta Flight 1502 to Atlanta. Boarding now." She stood up. Her white blouse was wrinkled from sleeping in it. Her hair was a mess. She had not eaten in 14 hours. She did not run to the gate. She walked. She was not trying to win this morning. She was just trying to be there. Sienna thought the interview was the only thing she had to worry about now. She was wrong about two things. The first one was already happening. She found her jump seat near the rear galley. Across from her, a flight attendant slid into the empty cabin crew seat. Her badge said, M. Caldwell. "Long night?" the woman asked. "You could say that." "I'm Marie. I saw what you did at B12 last night. Word spreads fast among crew." Sienna looked at her. It wasn't a big deal. Marie watched her for a second. "You know who that man was?" "Just a grandfather trying to get home, right?" Marie smiled, strangely. Right." She didn't say anything else for the rest of the flight. When the plane touched down at Hartsfield-Jackson at 7:42 a.m., Sienna grabbed her backpack and headed toward the front. As she passed row 22, she glanced out the window and saw something strange. A black SUV was waiting on the tarmac just below the jet bridge. The kind of car that doesn't pick up regular travelers. Two men in dark coats stood beside it. She didn't think about it. She had 38 minutes to make her interview. The Uber to downtown Atlanta cost her $26.40 of the $36 she had left. As the car pulled to the curb, she looked up and froze. The building in front of her was 32 stories of glass and steel. Across the top, the name read, Brown and Wilson Tower. Brown. The old man's card had said Howard B. She told herself it was a coincidence. She walked through the revolving doors at 8:52 a.m., 22 minutes late, hair a mess, blouse wrinkled. She approached the front desk. The receptionist was a woman in her 50s with red hair and small glasses. Her nameplate read, Patricia Carlisle. "Welcome to Brown and Wilson Holdings. Sienna Morgan, interview for Director of Logistics Operations?" Patricia typed for a moment, then she stopped. A small, surprised smile crossed her face. "Miss Morgan, we've been expecting you. Top floor. The chairman is waiting." Sienna's stomach dropped. The chairman? I thought I was interviewing with HR and the COO. Patricia just smiled and stood up. "Right this way." She led Sienna past the public elevators to a smaller one marked Private. She tapped her badge. The doors slid open. "He's expecting you alone." The doors closed. The elevator began to rise. Sienna caught her reflection in the polished steel. Hair tangled, blouse creased, eyes hollow. She was 22 minutes late to a final interview. And now she was going to the chairman's office. She was not going to get this job. She accepted that. She closed her eyes. The elevator chimed, a soft ding. The doors slid open. She stepped out. There are moments in life when the world stops moving, and you realize you changed it the night before. The room Sienna walked into was vast. Floor-to-ceiling glass on 3 sides. Atlanta spread out below her. Gray sky, snow on the rooftops. The spires of downtown rising through the morning haze. The desk at the far end of the office was a single slab of dark wood. Behind it, a tall leather chair was turned away from her, facing the city. She took 2 steps inside. The door closed behind her, quiet. A voice came from the chair, low, warm, familiar in a way she could not yet place. "Ms. Morgan, please, come in." The chair turned, slowly, and Sienna Morgan stopped breathing. It was him, the same man, but not the same man. The tweed coat was gone. The trembling was gone. The desperate, broken old man at gate B12 was gone. In his place sat a man in a navy suit cut from the kind of fabric that does not wrinkle, a silver watch on his wrist, white hair combed back, clean. His eyes were the same eyes, but now they were calm and sharp. On the desk in front of him, set in the exact center, was a single white business card. The same business card. Her business card. Her hands went weak. Her bag slipped from her shoulder. She did not feel it hit the floor. "Sienna," he said, slowly, as if savoring the sound. "Sienna Morgan, we meet again." He stood and rested his fingertips on the desk. "I'm Howard Brown, founder and chairman of Brown and Wilson Holdings." She could not speak. He gave her a moment. He understood. "Last night," he said gently, "I was flying back from a board meeting at our Boston office. My private jet developed a mechanical failure on the tarmac, grounded for 12 hours. The only commercial flight that would get me back in time was the last Delta out of LaGuardia." He gestured at his coat hanging on a hook near the desk, the same worn tweed. "I rushed to the gates straight from the taxi. I didn't have time to change. This coat is from 1995. My late wife gave it to me. My security team got held up at TSA because of a passport issue. By the time they cleared, I was already at B12, alone." "Emma," he said, and his voice changed. "Emma is my granddaughter. She's 8 years old. My son Daniel and his wife are doctors at Emory. They've been monitoring a congenital condition in her brain since she was 3. Last night, it became an emergency. They scheduled neurosurgery for 11 p.m. He was quiet for a long second. If I had missed that flight, I would have missed the last moments before she went under." He looked at Sienna directly. "You gave me those moments, Ms. Morgan." Sienna's eyes burned. She did not blink. "Emma came out of surgery at 4:18 a.m. this morning," he said. "The next 24 hours are critical, but she's breathing on her own." His voice cracked just once. "She squeezed her mother's hand, Sienna." He looked at her. "She squeezed her mother's hand because of you." Sienna sat down without being asked. The chair behind her caught her. Until this moment, she had not allowed herself to think about what could have happened if she hadn't given up that seat. Now she did. For one full second, she let herself feel it. Then she pushed it back down. Because that was who she had always been. Howard let the silence hold. Then he said more quietly, "I didn't hear what they said after I walked into the jet bridge, Sienna, but I saw their faces before, and I can guess." Sienna shook her head. "It doesn't matter, Mr. Brown." "It matters to me." His eyes were steady. "Because they didn't just insult you. They insulted the only thing in this world I still believe in." He stood and walked to the window. He looked out over the city for a long moment before he turned back to her. "I've spent 40 years building this company," he said. "I've negotiated with senators, with Saudi princes, with hedge fund managers in suits worth more than your apartment. Every single one of them looks at me, and they see what I can give them." He came back to the desk. "Last night, at gate B12, a woman who had every reason to look at me the same way looked at me and saw a grandfather." He paused. "Do you know how rare that is?" Sienna found her voice. It was small. "Mr. Brown, I didn't do it for anything. I know," he said gently. "I know. That is exactly why I'm offering you what I am about to offer you." He picked up a thick folder from the side of the desk and set it in front of him. He did not open it yet. He just rested his hand on the cover and looked at her. He took a breath. He was about to begin. That was when the door behind Sienna opened. A man's voice came in, fast, professional, distracted. "Mr. Brown, sir, I have the quarterly logistics report. The voice stopped. Mid-sentence. Mid-step. Sienna did not turn around. She didn't have to. She already knew that voice. She heard the papers begin to slip, slow, from a man's hand. She heard the sound of a stranger realizing exactly who was sitting in the chair across from him. The man in the Rolex from gate B12 had just walked into Howard Brown's office.
There are two kinds of people in this office this morning. Only one of them is going to be here after lunch. Howard Brown set the folder back on the desk. He turned his head slowly toward the door.
Mr. Whitfield, glad you joined us. His voice was light, almost conversational. Have you and Ms. Morgan met before?
The man at the door was no longer the smug man at gate B12. The Rolex was still on his wrist. The wool overcoat was now neatly hanging on his arm, but the color in his face had drained out. His mouth was open. Nothing was coming out. I don't believe so, sir. Howard smiled. There was no warmth in it. Sienna turned in her chair. The man in the Rolex saw her. His knees almost gave out. Interesting, Howard said.
Because I distinctly remember meeting both of you at LaGuardia last night, gate B12, around 9:30 p.m. Garrett opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. Howard pointed at the desk. Set the report there. Stand against that wall. Don't speak unless I ask you to. Garrett moved like a man underwater. He put the folder down. He stepped to the wall. He stood. Howard turned back to Sienna. His voice softened.
Ms. Morgan, the position we advertised was Director of Logistics Operations.
He slid the thick folder across the desk toward her. I'd like to amend that offer. She did not touch the folder. She just looked at him. He opened it for her. The first page was a contract. The top line read, Offer of Employment, Vice President of Operations. Underneath, Base salary, $285,000 per year. Equity, 0.5% common stock, vesting over 4 years. Sign-on bonus, $120,000 payable within 30 days.
Sienna read it once.
Then she read it again. Her hands stayed flat on her lap. Mr. Brown, she said softly, this is not what I applied for. I know. And I need to ask you something. Please be honest with me. Always. The other candidates, the ones who were ahead of me, what about them? Howard's expression did not change. He had been waiting for this question. Maybe he had hoped for it.
There were 6 finalists for the original position, he said.
After 2 rounds of screening, you ranked 3rd. Last night did not change that screening, Sienna. It changed what I needed in this role. He folded his hands on the desk. I have plenty of executives who maximize shareholder return at any cost. I don't need another one. I need a VP who maximizes shareholder return and who still recognizes a grandfather when she sees one. The first I can teach. The second I cannot. He paused.
I am not offering you this job because of what you did last night. I am offering you this job because of what you did last night, and because your resume says you spent 5 years building a logistics network from scratch at a company that didn't deserve you. He met her eyes. The first is character. The second is competence. I promote on both. Anything less is charity, and I don't run a charity. The room was very quiet. Sienna sat there for a long moment. Then she reached forward, picked up the pen on the desk, and turned to the signature line on the last page. She signed. My mother used to say, kindness costs nothing, but remembers everything, she said quietly. She was wrong about the first part, but she was right about the second. Howard's eyes softened. Welcome to Brown & Wilson, Ms. Morgan. Then, without looking at the wall, he said, Mr. Whitfield? Garrett straightened. Yes, sir. You've been at Brown & Wilson for 14 months. Howard's voice was steady, flat, professional. Last night, you publicly mocked an elderly man at an airport gate, a man who, as it happens, was the founder of your company. Garrett's mouth opened. Howard raised one finger. I haven't finished. Garrett closed his mouth. You didn't just mock me, Mr. Whitfield. You publicly accused a black woman of theft, of welfare fraud, of racial stereotyping, at a Delta gate, in front of witnesses, with cameras running. He let that sit. Brown and Wilson's Code of Conduct, page 4, paragraph 3, requires every employee to treat strangers with the same respect they show executives. You signed that document on your first day. But that's not the only document at play here, is it? There's also defamation law.
Garrett went the color of paper.
Sir, I didn't know. Don't. Howard raised his hand. Just don't. The defense, I didn't know who he was, is the same defense as, I would have been decent if I had known he mattered. That is not a defense in this office. It is the disqualification. He turned to the phone on his desk and pressed a single button. Carol, send HR to the chairman's office. Termination for cause, effective end of business today. No severance. Mr. Whitfield will be escorted from the building. He hung up. Garrett stood there, mouth open, as if waiting for the room to reverse what had just happened. It did not. He turned. He walked to the door. He did not look at Sienna. He did not look at Howard. He left. The door closed behind him. Howard turned to Sienna. Your first executive decision, Ms. Morgan. Was that fair?
Sienna thought for a moment.
Yes, sir, she said. He earned it. Howard nodded. Welcome to the chair. In the 6 months that followed, the office of the Vice President of Operations would see more change than the 14 years before it combined. The first 3 days happened fast. Sienna signed the lease on a 2-bedroom corporate apartment in Midtown Atlanta on Monday afternoon, funded by Brown and Wilson, 6 months prepaid. She bought her first real work suit from a department store on Peachtree on Tuesday morning, navy, the same color Howard had been wearing that day. 2 weeks later, Devin called her in tears. An email from the Brown Family Foundation had landed in his inbox that morning. Full tuition, living stipend, books, nothing to repay. He kept saying, "Are you sure, sis?" until Sienna finally said, "Dev, they didn't even ask me. They just looked at your grades. Open the email again." In her first month as VP, Sienna walked into Howard's office and pitched something. She called it Gate B12 Initiative. Scholarships for the children of airport service workers across the 14 largest U.S. airports. Gate agents, baggage handlers, janitorial staff. Howard listened. Then he wrote a check for $5 million as starting capital. Hannah Bennett, the gate agent who had handed the boarding pass to Howard that night, became the program's first advisor. She cried on the phone when Sienna called her. By the 3rd month, Sienna had restructured Brown and Wilson's logistics across 14 distribution centers. Delay rates dropped 23% in a single quarter. Forbes named her in its Next Gen Executives Under 30 list. Garrett Whitfield's mother sent Howard a handwritten letter of apology. Howard never replied. 5 months in, Sienna was invited to Sunday dinner at Howard's home in Buckhead. The door opened, and a small blonde girl in a pink dress came running across the marble floor and threw her arms around Sienna's waist. "You're the lady who let Grandpa come see me." Sienna knelt down. Her voice was thick. "Your grandpa came because he loves you very much. I just helped him a little." Daniel Brown, Howard's son, stood in the doorway with tears in his eyes. "Miss Morgan, my family owes you everything." Sienna shook her head. She didn't say anything. Meanwhile, somewhere on the internet, the world was catching up. A former Delta employee had leaked the Gate B12 security footage to TikTok. The video was 26 seconds long. It showed Sienna handing the boarding pass to a tweed-coated old man, followed by the businessman's smirk and the blonde woman's whispered cruelty. It went viral in 6 days. 23 million views. The hashtag B12 Witnesses trended for a full week. An independent education fund tried to start a scholarship in Sienna's name. She politely declined. They renamed it the Heritage Coin Scholarship instead, after a small detail she'd mentioned in passing to Forbes about her mother. She never spoke about that detail in public again. Devin Morgan graduated from Morehouse cum laude 8 months later. He started at Stanford Law with a full scholarship, free housing, and a guaranteed summer placement. Hannah Bennett was sponsored through a part-time MBA at Emory by the Brown and Wilson Foundation. She wrote Sienna a note that said, "I just did my job that night. You did everything else." As for Garrett Whitfield, the consequences came slow and quiet. 3 large firms in his industry quietly passed on him at the reference check stage. He landed 6 months later at a mid-sized logistics company in Cincinnati. Not a punishment, just the natural result of a man who had been louder than his judgment. The blonde woman from Gate B12 was named Vivian Ashford. The internet figured that out within 48 hours of the video going viral. She was, it turned out, the vice president of marketing at a luxury cosmetics brand in New York, a brand whose flagship campaign that year had been titled Diversity and Empowerment. Her own employer terminated 3 major advertising contracts within a week. The board quietly removed her from all public-facing roles. She was not fired. She was simply made invisible. A reporter from CNN flew to Atlanta to ask Sienna for a comment. Sienna gave one sentence. "I have nothing to say about that woman. She said enough for both of us." And that was the end of it. 1 year later, Sienna Morgan walked back into LaGuardia. This time, she carried a leather laptop bag and a first-class boarding pass. She wore a navy coat that fit. She did not run for her flight. It was 9:30 p.m., a Thursday, the same Thursday, 12 months to the night. She walked to Gate B12. Hannah Bennett was still working the late shift. When she saw Sienna, her hand flew to her mouth. The 2 women hugged for a long moment without saying anything. Sienna sat down by the window. The flight to Chicago, where Brown and Wilson was opening a new distribution hub, was boarding in 40 minutes. That was when she noticed the young man at the counter. 20-something, faded gray hoodie, a backpack that looked like it had survived college. He was asking the agent something quietly. The agent shook her head and pointed at the standby screen. The young man stepped back, rubbed his forehead, and sat down 2 rows from Sienna. She got up and walked over. "Sir, are you trying to get to Chicago tonight?" He looked up, surprised. "Yeah, my mom's having surgery in the morning. I missed my earlier flight." Sienna pulled the boarding pass from her coat pocket. "Take this, window seat, 2A. "Ma'am, no, I can't." "You can," she smiled. The same quiet smile she had given an old man at this same gate 1 year ago. "And someday, when you're in a position to help someone, you will." She placed the pass in his hand and closed his fingers around it. He stared at it. He stared at her. He could not seem to find the right words. She didn't need him to. She did not give him a business card. She did not tell him her name. She just turned and walked back to her seat. She opened her laptop. She would catch the 5:30 red-eye in the morning instead. On a regular economy ticket, she would pay for herself. Howard would never know. No one would. That was the point. 18 months after that first night, Gate B12 Initiative had awarded 489 scholarships across 14 airports. Sienna had been promoted to Chief Operations Officer at the 11th month of her VP tenure. That spring, a 3rd-grade teacher at a private school in Buckhead read aloud an essay submitted by one of her students. The essay began, "My hero is a lady I met when I was 8. Her name is Sienna. She gave my grandpa a seat on an airplane so he could see me. That's why I want to be kind too." Inside Sienna Morgan's coat pocket, on a thin chain around her neck, an old quarter rested quietly against her shirt. She had never flipped it. She didn't need to. The world judges people in 3 seconds, by what they wear, by what they carry, by the color of their skin. But Sienna Morgan looked at a tired old man,
and saw a grandfather. That kind of kindness is rare. That kind of kindness changes lives. And sometimes, when the world isn't watching, it changes the lives of the people who give it too. Kindness never asks who is watching, but life always remembers.
If this story moved you, drop a heart below. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And subscribe, because Part 2 drops next Friday. Sienna's first year as COO. The lawsuit Garrett Whitfield is now threatening to file against Brown and Wilson, and the unexpected message Emma Brown sends to her grandfather on the anniversary of that night. Good hearts deserve good endings. We'll see you in the next one.